So today, guys, what we want to talk about is the abolition movement. Okay. So as we talk about the Great Awakening and the issues of the Great Awakening, we want to make sure that you guys understand that the first movement, major movement in the United States is abolition. And abolition simply, guys, is the removal of slavery. Okay? Slavery uh, as an institution. It's something that you just do. Okay. Slavery has been around for centuries. We still have it today. It just went underground. It's we to understand what black markets. Anytime there's a supply and demand, there's a market. And so even though we say it's bad, people are still enslaved. Even here in America, there's still slavery, even though it's banned. And if law enforcement finds out about it, of course, they'll stop it. But again, they have to find out. And so a lot of things go what is called under the table, where you can't see it. And the first movement of the 19th century was to get rid of slavery for slavery's sake. Slavery serves two roles. There's an economic part to slavery, and this is the social part of slavery, the religious part, that it is banning of owning another person for owning sake. But what abolition doesn't address for is the economic issue. So on one hand, you have people that, oh, it's wrong to own another person, but they don't necessarily want to get rid of the money benefits of owning the person. So what we call a paradox. And even Thomas Jefferson called it the necessary evil. Okay, he agreed it's wrong to own other people, but when you own somebody else, the privilege, the economic benefits, the ease of lifestyle makes it hard to want to let it go. So the first thing that Thomas Jefferson and the founding fathers, and why they didn't mention it, was called gradualism. This is one of the first things when abolitionists and religious leaders wanted to go ahead and what we call phase it out. You will notice a lot of people believe in gradualism with everything. Right now, you guys are considered adolescents. You're not children, but you're not adult either. And so eventually you are graduated into adulthood. Okay. Hopefully everybody understands that it is kind of a phasing out process of what you're supposed to be able to do. Even how I'm trying to run my class, how I'm running my class, is that we're constantly trying to put you in more rigorous situations because that's what high school, that's what adult life will require. For slavery, it needed to be ended slowly. So that a lot of times you will see that as age limits or child limits is usually how they wanted to gradually stop it. So, you know, you're going to be a slave until you're 25. You're going to be a slave till you're 30. And then boom, you'll slowly get rid of people. But, you know, everyone will be a slave until they turn a certain age, or by a certain year, you'll slowly get rid of it. I want to make one more comment about gradualism. If you heard about the Green New Deal, trying to bring in electric cars, gradualism is something politicians have brought up, is that by 2035, we'll all have electric cars. So they're going to slowly phase out gas. This is an idea. We don't have to kill it cold turkey, but we'll slowly wean people off. We use it with diets. This is an idea. And so they wanted to use this idea with slavery. First, stop new slaves from coming in. So we're going to stop importing slaves from Africa. And then, as you see, it's slavery in the North and in the upper South, and then there's the lower South. Slowly phase it out to where it's not needed. The problem was the economic part of it. The South was so dependent on slaves for cotton, tobacco, rice, building projects. You know, nobody's trying to pay. So it's like, you know, paying is a form of tax, and people were not into that. So wait a minute, why would I pay anybody when I can get it for free? So the economic benefits of slavery were just too high to even want to gradually slow it down. The other thing was about colonization. So we bring back this stuff from 7th grade is that, you know, if you've heard these racist remarks, well, Black people or Hispanic people need to go back where they came from. This is the idea of when we talk about colonization, going back to Latin America or going back to Africa. And so when we talk about that, even then, this was the second proposal. If Black people are not really wanted here socially, we need to set up a space for them to go. This is where we talk about the creation of Liberia in Africa right now, and other places in Latin America that were set up, designated these safe spots, AKA reservations. So we're going to send these people, just like we did the Native Americans, to a far off place where we don't have to deal with them anymore, and we can go on and do something else. So in their best interest, though. So everything is always going to be set up in terms of how the perception is. And so the first one, gradualization, we're going to slowly get rid of slavery. And those people that don't assimilate into the new American society, well, we're going to put them on a reservation. We're going to move them somewhere else. So here's the problems. Massive problem is sending people back to Africa. We established the state or colony of Liberia. The problem is moving all those people back to Africa. It was already an expensive proposition anyway to sail back to Africa, sell people to Africa with supplies and everything else. There's no different than, like I said, reverse immigration. It's already hard to immigrate people to the United States anyway. Now you're talking about forced immigration back to somewhere else. That's expensive. We're still dealing with that issue right now on the southern border when these detention camps and all this other foolishness that they're doing. We're going to send them back. Send them back where? It becomes in practice, it becomes illogical, becomes foolish. But yet it's still being done because somebody believes it's practical. If you heard about in today's time, the dreamers, kids that were brought here from other parts of the world, mainly from Latin America, when they were kids, they didn't have a right to it and they grew up here. This is the idea of sending them back. And you say, wait a minute, sending them back where? They've been Americans the whole time. They've grown up being Americans. How are they going to now go back to Costa Rica or El Salvador when they've been here from day one? So these issues keep regurgitating themselves over and over again in our present day, as we call it, immigration. But these were the original ideas of abolition. So when we talk about abolition itself, gaining popularity in the idea of the Great Awakening, killing off slavery completely, like no more slavery tomorrow. Okay, not realistic. Emancipation or complete freedom of slaves, and as you see, it grew strength during the Great Awakening. The idea of owning someone else for your own personal gain was outlawed on principle. But in practice, it's like, but I'm getting so many benefits out of it. That's where the conflict goes. One of the first people that we want to make sure that you guys know about, and if you didn't know about him before, is a guy called David Walker. David Walker, guys, was actually born right here in North Carolina, in Wilmington, and he was born a free man. So he was actually one of the originators, OGs of the Abolition Project. Was a freed Black man, free man. He was born right here in New Hanover County, wanted to instantly free slaves everywhere, okay? And he was like, if you didn't want to do it naturally, we're going to do it by force. By any means necessary, we need to kill the personal and economic issues that are tied to chattel slavery or slavery based on skin tone. He published a book, The Colored Citizens of the World, in 1829. And there were death threats in New Hanover County, AKA Wilmington. There were death threats put upon him. And upon the death threats that he received, he moved to Boston and then mysteriously died of food poisoning in Boston, Massachusetts. So we want to make sure that even here in North Carolina, there were people pushing for the complete ending of slavery economically and socially. And he's one of the original people that did it, even though he died under mysterious circumstances as a young man. He was in his early 30s. Right, here's a picture of him. So he became renowned when he moved to Boston. But the sheer fact of he was a free person here in North Carolina, in Wilmington. Wilmington was like we talk about Atlanta today. Wilmington, North Carolina was that space during the 19th century for people of color. Another person that we want to talk about, OGs, was William Lord Garrison. Garrison founded the anti-slavery paper called The Liberator in the 1830s and was an advocate for getting rid of slavery in the United States all the way around. Again, abolition is on moral grounds, the idea of not owning somebody, but it never addresses the economic issues. Okay, so it's like the benefits. How do you get rid of the benefits of not owning other people? They never really address it. It just says it's just wrong, morally wrong to own people. Okay. He's another person that called for a complete end instantly. Let's just stop it. Let's get rid of it without addressing the economic issues. What do you do with these people now that can't read, can't write, can't count, that can't handle these adult situations that we're trying to get you guys ready for? There's no education. Who's going to pay for the education and readjust for these people? Garrison nor Walker addressed these things. Okay, you're going to depend on the church going to fix it. Charities. Who's going to address the practical needs of these individuals once you free them? Abolition does not address that, and this is where he said there's a massive loophole or massive problem with just freeing slaves. The other ones are the Grimsky sisters. These are others. They started in South Carolina and openly against slavery. They weren't twins per se, but they owned slaves, and then they got rid of them. They freed their slaves, and they were wealthy because they owned slaves. They got rid of their slaves, and they published books on wanting to get rid of slavery in the South, completely based on religious ideas. Here is a unusual picture of what we have left of them, because they moved up north from South Carolina, just like Mr. Walker did. And these are the pictures of they have. So you see, a lot of people say they weren't most attractive for what we have photographed pictures of. Classic, when we talk about probably the most renowned individual next to David Walker, and had probably had David Walker had lived longer, these two individuals probably would have definitely been more together with Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, the name he adopts, because that's not his actual name, is renowned as an orator. You can get his autobiography. He wrote 3 autobiographies during his lifetime. Born in Maryland, he runs away across the Mason-Dixon line, eventually getting up into New England, and he becomes a writer. He's actually taught how to read, and he really works on it. And from personal experience, and this is where he differs from David Walker, he looks at the practical issues of how do we slowly get rid of slavery and get rid of it outright. But he wants to make sure that the people that are freed are taken care of. So he writes his first autobiography, The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, that you guys can read. It's in the public library. It is still a bestseller, trying to understand the life of abolition during the antebellum period. This is Frederick Douglass, one of his last pictures that was taken in 1870s, that we actually get a good picture of what he looked like as an old man. Uh, and the picture doesn't give him justice because he was uh, a mulatto. So, you know, his dad was apparently a a white man, but he had a very toned skin tone. So he wasn't a very fair skinned man. Um, as you see it, but uh, according to him, his dad was white. Sojourner Truth was another person that gained her freedom, that got through, uh, and she became a writer when New York freed their slaves, and she also pushed for abolition. And she gave lots of speeches and poems about how to help end slavery everywhere else. New York is one of the, up north they freed it because it wasn't fashionable to keep slaves in the north, mainly because of the labor part of it. So they got rid of them. Um, but the South was completely dependent. This is one of the classic pictures of Sojourner Truth. As you see, her real name. This Sojourner Truth is her pen name. Just like Frederick Douglass, he adopts that name, but that wasn't his legal birth name. So they adopt names that sound slightly better. And you see as entertainers and athletes and stuff, I said athletes, actors do that. They adopt a more verbally friendly name. Okay. So again, we talk about reactions to abolition. In the North, is seen as immoral, completely on ideas or principles. But the opposition says economics is going to hurt businesses, and it's going to be an influx of free blacks all over the place. What do you do with them? They can't read, they can't write, they can't count, and they're not used to the social, political, and economic issues of being a regular adult. So it's kind of like a lot of people in opposition. You're going to turn loose a bunch of kids, and they're grown. They're going to turn free a bunch of kids. How do you adjust for that? Because they have to be educated and adjusted into society. So in the South, it definitely became the social institution, and the economic issues became a way of life. And so in the southern states, they're like, well, there's no way, even economically, we're going to let it go. And there's no way we're going to let go of the social benefits of having this many people of color down here, period. Okay, so the South is hit with what we call a double whammy. The economics are tied to it, and the social privileges are tied to it. So it's like there's no way we're going to freely walk away from it, gradual or complete abolition. So there's a lot of violence that comes out of it. The most famous one, and there's a lot of slave revolts, but the most famous one on the religious end was Nat Turner's Rebellion. They made a drama movie about this that you can watch. I think it might be on YouTube or even now, about his life and his story. They dramatized it. You can actually read. Nat Turner was actually given. He was a slave preacher. Nat Turner was actually given the privilege of having this. How much they actually respected him, even though they despised him at the same time. He was actually put on trial. So you can actually see the actual trial notes before they killed him. He was actually put on trial, and he actually talks about why he led this murderous campaign through Southampton, Virginia, which is about 2.5 hours from here, guys. So it's not that far away. The movie that you guys can see, it's not Up From Slavery, because that's I want to make sure I say it right. The Birth of a Nation. That's kind of which is the actual name.